Hafaday and good evening, and welcome to another episode of My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera. In this episode, we sit down with a bereavement counselor from Health Services of the Pacific, Roselle Pangilinan. And we get to know more about her job and the kind of family she meets. We also learn more about what drives her to take on such a role. So in this episode, we speak with someone who may not be a warrior or survivor herself, but in addition to helping other families, she has dealt with losses in her family because of cancer. So thank you for joining us. We'll be right back after this short break. And welcome back to another episode of My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera, and joining me today is Roselle Pangilinan with the Health Services of the Pacific. She is a bereavement counselor, correct?
Yes,
okay.
correct.
Thank you for joining us on My Story. So your line of work involves a lot of dealing with families and patients who are taking care of someone who has some sort of disease or illness that would bring them kind of somewhat towards the end of life. And that's a very challenging, I can imagine, it's a very challenging job. Mm-hmm. Obviously for the families it's very tough, but for a counselor who deals with this day in and day out, how did you get into this role? How did you, end up becoming a bereavement counselor?
Well, let's just start with education.
Sure.
I think that's number one. Through education and in time, you find yourself searching what is your purpose? Mm-hmm. And I found it through going to school, employment, and just meeting so much people, and especially living on Guam. I love the culture here. Mm-hmm. I love the people here. And when it hits home, you ask yourself, oh, wow, what can I do now? So hitting home, I think that would be my definite answer of why I'm here today.
So when you say hit home, meaning you've had a personal experience?
Yes, definitely,
okay.
definitely.
Could you share that with us?
Well, my parents have left. They're in heaven. Mm-hmm. My goddaughter just recently passed. My son's father had passed. And there's so much emotion and trauma that one goes through, but it's very individual. We experience it differently. And just knowing what's going on in their mind, that makes me reach out and say, okay, I think I know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your goddaughter is?
She was 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you felt a lot of this personally. Mm-hmm. Now, when you come across these different families, like just as an example, I'm a journalist, so you come across these different stories. Mm-hmm. And over time, you're kind of numb to certain things. Do you ever get that in your line of work, or is it the same feeling? Do you start out fresh with each and every family that you help?
Oh my, that's a very good question. You find good questions. Thank you. You have to find yourself grounded. Mm. Okay, so yes, after you see a family, you want to just take a step back, take a breather,
right,
and say, okay, where am I at today? Who am I meeting? But when it hits home, it's a whole new ball game. Mm-hmm. There. What you try to remember, say, okay, let me balance it out. Is this for professionalism or is this for me?
Right.
Okay. Right. And the way I express it is, we're only human. We're not perfect. I don't know everything, and we're going to experience this together. Mm-hmm. And that's how I reach out to my families. So my intro is, I don't know everything. Uh-huh. Right. Sometimes I have nothing to say, but to let you know I'm here. So it's the way you talk to them, the verbiage.
So how long have you been doing this now?
With bereavement counseling,
yes.
About a year now.
Oh, okay.
Just a year.
What were you doing before that?
I was a flight attendant.
Oh, okay.
For almost 24 years.
Okay.
And education, again,
yeah.
It reached up to here, and now I'm a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
And prior to that, I reached out to the homeless community, the veterans, the you know, the list goes on.
Yeah.
And again, the nonprofit organizations here, you know, they're such in
Yeah.
need.
I mean, wow, that's quite a change from being a flight attendant to a bereavement counselor, a counselor in general. And I find that amazing that you know you
Thank
found it
you.
in your heart. And are you? I guess is it satisfying? You know, after 24 years of being a flight attendant, and you know, you help people, obviously doing that as well. But do you find like do you think you've found your calling in what you're doing now?
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, individual, you know, experiences, whether it be the needs they have on the plane. I mean, there's so much needs they have.
Right, right.
They could be demanding, and so you find yourself, okay, let's little sugarcoat it there, right? But you learn not to when it comes to bereavement. You know, you want to just say it the way it is, but you need to be that sensitive person. You need to listen more.
Now you've been doing this for about a year. Any stories that you can share that might have affected you, maybe more so than others, or that really stands out in the year that you've been doing this?
Oh yes, just recently. Well, we're there to, you know, meet the families, right, going through hospice, and they're different personalities. So there's one that stood out recently, and their family dynamics wonderful. They laugh, they joke around, but they know that their parent is leaving. They have the support from their neighbors, their relatives, you know, everybody. And so again, this is one of the families that really stood out. Then when she did pass, the parent passed, I went over to their home and I hugged the family member. And because I felt the need to say, would you like me to say a rosary? You know, I'm not certified Tetsa or anything, okay? She said she didn't have to say yes, but you can feel her nod when she was hugging me, and it felt wonderful that I'm there to support her, whether spiritually, you know, and the family was there. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
It's almost like you were a part of the family.
yes,
as well.
yes,
Yeah.
and that's why I want them to know that we're only human. You know, we need each other.
Do you for me, right? I'm a tearjerker. I cry at everything.
No.
So I do. So I imagine if I were to get in that kind of line of work, I'd probably be crying everywhere with every family I meet. I mean, does it ever get that to that level for you? Do you cry with them?
Oh,
Do you?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Again, I'm going to just reiterate, we're only human.
Right.
And again, when I was talking to one family member, I cried. I cried because, mind you, I was just mourning, you know, and it just clicks, you know. And of course, I apologize. And again, that human factor comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe you know, maybe what you get paid to do is basically your line of work, what you do for a living, has really no measurement in terms of the kind of help that you could provide for families.
Yeah, I believe it's priceless.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely
priceless.
You know, because I mean, if that happened to my family and we had a bereavement counselor help us through that, I can't put a price on that. That would be of great help and assistance to us. So, you know, I just lost a grandfather recently too. So,
Sorry.
so you know, I know the feeling of having someone there to help us. Well, we didn't have one, so we actually had to do everything on our own, and it was hospice also.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just hearing the kind of services and the help that you provide it's amazing. Now, you mentioned earlier, we were kind of talking about it, that there are somewhat two paths at HSP when a family comes to your office needing assistance. Can you talk about the difference between that two?
Okay. We have home care and we have hospice.
Okay.
Okay. Home care is temporary care, and it deals with like a temporary wound that would need nurse care or doctor's care as well, right? But sometimes if our IDG team, which is our interdisciplinary group, decides that, hey, Russ, see this family, okay, I step in. And then there's the other part is hospice. Hospice is when you are diagnosed 6 months or less to live.
Right.
And so this is where we reach out, I mean, almost instantly, and then talk to the families and assess them and find out how they're coping.
Yeah. Do you know about how many families you've already helped in that? I'm trying to get an idea of what 1 year looks like in terms of how many families.
Annually?
Yeah, annually.
Oh,
well, for one person, like for example, you.
For me?
Yeah, like how many
Oh my
families
gosh,
you
it's
helped?
so overwhelming. I can't even
really?
tell you.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But again, when that team works, I think this was like the second time I canceled because of the timing.
So you could have multiple families at one time. It's not really just
Yes.
one at a time.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So how many counselors would you say are under the hospice and then under home care at HSP?
Me.
Just you for hospice.
Yes.
And then, but they have one for home care. But occasionally you.
Yeah.
Oh, there's okay. Wow, it's just you. God bless you. You are amazing. How do you do it?
They asked me that question too. How do I do it? It's time management, and again, you have to come back and make yourself grounded again.
Okay.
And say, "Gosh, you are needed." And I have that trait, that best trait to tell you that I am the counselor, and I'm here for you.
Wow.
And so you reach out to them, whether it's meeting them on the phone or going there to their home and meeting the family.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up this portion. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what you do, maybe some more stories about some of the families you've helped, and maybe your outlook on the future in doing this.
All right.
So we'll stay right there. We'll be right back right here at My Story. Hafide, and welcome back to My Story. Again, I'm your host, Janella Carrera, and Roselle Pangilinan from HSP. She's a bereavement counselor. Earlier, we were talking about, your line of work, what you do. But could you give us an idea of how many families and patients that because you've only been doing this for about a year now, right? Yeah. In that year's time, how many families have you met or helped?
It's countless. I mean, it's... I don't count the numbers per se. I just, they come to me and I go to them, when I can and when they need us. So, but HSP has 4,000 or 5,000 families.
A year?
I would say. Yes.
4,000 or 5,000 families. Yeah. So you juggle multiple families at a time. I mean, or you're not just like one at a time. You see multiple families at a time. Help them out.
Yes.
Okay. And as I imagine that in your line of work, hospice care, for me, someone like me, who's I beg your pardon, I'm a little ignorant or not familiar with it, but
it's okay.
I imagine them to be, elderly. That's what I picture when I hear the word hospice, right? Elderly people, but it's not necessarily just elderly, who are basically at the center of those families that you help. Can you give us an idea of like some of the ages or the conditions that you assist?
The ages is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Once their doctors have diagnosed a member of the family hospice, it's 6 months or less. So any age can happen. Family members, sometimes they know how to cope, sometimes they don't. And that's where I come out and talk to the families and see where they need me.
When you say don't know how to cope, like what, that can mean so many different things. Because, for example, for a family, it could be like the first death, very close death. What seems to be, I guess, the grief process for them, or not necessarily the grief process, but the process for them in trying to understand, what they need to do or how they should prepare for something like this?
Well, you can't prepare for anything like this.
Yeah.
And first of all, what you need to remember that grief is not a timeline at all. You can grieve for years. You know, it's a lifetime process.
Right.
And so when I talk to those who don't know how to cope, we don't tell them what to do. You know, again, you need to really listen. And sometimes they can't even tell you. They can be so numb. They shut themselves out. And those are warning signs that, uh-oh, this one needs, you know, more of an attention, you know, because this is not an easy process to go through.
Right.
You know, losing someone simultaneously or suddenly, you know, it's our loved ones. It's our loved ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even a pet is our loved ones.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah, I've lost a dog, and that was very hard for me. You know, that's a dog.
Yes.
You know, now earlier you mentioned that you know, you were a flight attendant for you know, over 20 years, and then switched over your career to counseling, and that you yourself, it hit home, you've experienced losing loved ones. Was it the loss of a loved one that led you to this career, or was it you know, you stepped into this role and then, you know, you experienced that loss as well?
In time, and the biggest word here, the key word is time. And you take it, you embrace it, and say, okay, why am I put here on this earth, or on this planet, or on this island? And with what I experience, I take that and make it meaningful. I said, this is my destiny. This is where I belong.
Yeah.
You know, because I've had experience the death, whether it be cancer or even suicide, or, you know, just trauma in itself. I want to help out. I want to reach out to the community.
Yeah.
I want to say, I'm here for a purpose. I don't know everything, you know, but I'm going to try my best.
The families that you've assisted, how many would you say? I guess, what kind of issues were they at the center of the family? Was it often, you know, was it, say, for example, mostly cancer-related deaths? Was it, you know, heart disease type deaths, or maybe another kind of illness that, you know, the doctor said, well, you only have, you know, 6 months to live? What kind of illnesses were at the center of these?
The families with
The ones that you've assisted?
Within in hospice.
Yeah.
Oh, there's multiple. There's multiple. I can't tell you all the terms and pronounce it right, but multiple. Yeah, it doesn't just stop from cancer. It doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I imagine cancer is one of those that.
It's a leading cause, yes.
Yeah,
of course.
Because I mean, in Guam, it's such a, you know, high rate of death is caused by cancer.
Yeah, they try to reach it as early as possible, of course.
Right.
You know, but when that time comes, this is where our lives change. And you know, I'm not saying that's the initial part, but just the initial part of disbelief. I'm really losing someone. Is this what's really happening? You break out the reality, and sometimes you get numb, and sometimes you don't know how to reach out. And then, of course, it could become a domino effect, and you find yourself depressed, and different coping mechanisms happen. You know, and that's why we're trying to assess the family that way, and find out where we can, you know, fit in to help.
Yeah, you know, I imagine with your job, there's a lot of sadness that you have to, you know, deal with. A lot of sadness amongst family members, especially, you know, in hospice where, you know, basically they're not expected to live past a certain point. How do you yourself deal with that sadness? How do you take it in? Do you see a counselor? I mean, I would think that you need to see one yourself.
Yes. Yes, but that's another story.
Yeah.
The story here with our families, you know, is help them cope. Okay, so the examples that I give them, and is what I suggest, are talking amongst your family members and reminisce the good times. And brings back laughter. You know, you can't imagine the families that I talk to as a group. You laugh. Laughter is medicine. Medicine is laughter. It's amazing, and their whole persona changes and say, "Oh yeah, remember that? Remember this?" And they start to laugh, and I remind them, talk about it, talk, communicate. within
Yeah,
each
let it
other.
out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then with the children, that was another concern that one of the families, how do I talk to my child? Well, before I go on with that, I also asked them, what's your religion? What's your take on are you Catholic? Are you Christian? So you got to keep in mind of those little background,
Right.
the way of living.
Religion could play a role as far as how they deal with death.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the children, if you start talking to them and you're, for example, Catholic, and you talk about angels and they're all around us, I would talk to the family and say, reach out and change your verbiage. Change your verbiage and say, oh, remember the angels? God's going to, bring one up again and watch over us. So you try to connect that way.
Have you ever had a family where, they were put in hospice care, told that, their relative or loved one wasn't going to live past a certain point, but then they lived and they beat the odds, or, has that ever happened? Have you ever had a case like that?
I've heard of one. But of course, we're happy.
Right.
We are elated. But the chances are very slim.
And that's why they're put in hospice.
Right. I mean, we try to help them as much as I can. But the home care is where there are more possibilities of healing.
It's temporary.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so earlier you talked about children, and the obviously differs from family to family, but children are children, innocent. For the most part, you could maybe say they're unaware, but really there is a part of them that is somewhat aware. Could you talk about some of the children that you've come across and how they have learned or how they deal with a loved one's passing?
Oh gosh, I have not regularly have seen children. Because I would talk to the parents and the family members more. But the issue is that they might, progress is via their school, and what's happening in the school. You get together with the counselors there, talk to the teachers. This is what I express to the parents. Find out if there's any, issues that unusual, emotions that run through the children, the other children, or in classrooms. So, I reach out to the parents, their grandparents, be aware around them. Because, like you said, they're innocent. They're innocent.
Very innocent, now, we're going to close out the show pretty soon, but before we go, what would you like to say to families who maybe not necessarily go through HSP, but have had similar situations or are going through something similar? What could you offer them who may be watching this now? Because I imagine, there are families who have a loved one afflicted with cancer or, trying to overcome it. What would you like to, some words with them, parting words with them?
Okay, well, I'd let them know that take a deep breath, okay? You got to focus on what's happening now. Come back to reality. I know it's difficult. I personally do. Remember it as self-care, okay? Sometimes I use that as, who's going to take care of you if I can't take care of myself, okay? Reach out to family members. We can't read minds. I wish we did, but we can. Let's see. There's more, but letting others know that I need help.
Yeah. Admitting that you need help.
And we're not alone. We're not alone. We're going to get through this, and together it becomes very powerful. So grieving together.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roselle, for joining us on this episode of My Story and sharing with us what you do. I'd say for a living, but really as a passion, because to me, this is not something you just choose to go into for the money. Obviously, this is something you do because it's what you love to do. So,
you're right.
So thank you so much for
welcome.
joining us and for sharing your story with us. And I wish you all the best in the world when you come across other families in the future. I'm sure they'll appreciate the help that you give them.
Thank you so much for having me today.
All right, no problem. All right, well, that about wraps up our episode for My Story. Again, Roselle Pangilinan from HSP. She's a bereavement counselor joining us today. Don't go anywhere. We'll close out the show right after this. Welcome back. Well, thank you once again for joining us for another episode of My Story. We here at My Story believe in providing a platform for cancer warriors, survivors, their family members, caretakers, doctors, specialists, or anyone who's been affected by the disease to share their story with our community. Our goal is to educate the public so that we can end this horrible disease once and for all. We'd like to thank all our sponsors and all of our guests who have shared their story with us. Before we go, we'd like to pay tribute to one of our former guests who joined us on the show, 11-year-old Samantha Serbin. Samantha passed away earlier this month and gained her angel wings. She was battling a rare form of leukemia. We thank you, Samantha, for sharing your story with us, and we will continue to pray for you and your family. Good night.